say you wanted to make a graph. So say I really like, this graph paper is so beautiful. Maybe not this one, it's a little small. I need a bunch more boxes. So you saw I just searched graph paper. Okay, so say I really think this is the most beautiful graph paper I've ever seen. Okay, great. I'm going to right click on it and copy image. Now I'm back in my Google Doc. I can do insert, drawing, new. Again, I'm super zoomed in. Okay. All right, now, can I move this? I'm gonna do it over because I zoomed out and now I don't like how it looks. I'm going to click on insert, drawing. So you could get an image that's already on your drive, or you can make an entirely new one. So I want to make a new one. And everywhere you see this gray and white checker, that's where your workspace is to make your drawing. So say I wanted to make a graph, and I'm going to use this graph paper to help me out. So this is what I do for you guys all the time. So pretend I wanted to graph an exponential equation. Okay, I'm going to use the line tool, and I'm going to draw in X and Y axes first, so as neatly as I can. It's a little crooked. Now, if I try to click now, I'm just going to keep making more lines, and I don't want to do that. But before I do, I'm going to go right here and put another arrow on the other end. Then I turn my cursor on, and now I can straighten this up a bit. Now, usually my best bet for straightening is if you pay attention on the side here, where these little rulers are, and up and down, you can tell how high or low certain things are. So I'm going to move this down, say, I don't know, two units or so. And it's pretty hard to line it really accurately. So if you look, you could see where the blue line is underneath the 5. So I clicked and dropped it there. So when I do the other end, I want to make sure it's in the same spot there. Looks pretty good. Click off. Looks pretty nice. If I wanted to make this line thicker, line weight, once I'm clicked on it, maybe I make it, a weight of 3. If you make it a weight of 4, maybe I like it like that, whatever. Now, another thing I can do, I'm going to, again, I made sure I had the cursor on, click on the line. I'm going to Command C or Control C, again, whatever computer you're using, that's copy, and then Command or Control V, I pasted. Now, I already have the arrows on both ends. I already have it the weight I like. I'm going to make my y-axis. So you're going to pay attention above, up here, where it's lining up as we put in this y-axis. So this looks like it's on that blue line right there. And that looks pretty good. And again, I click over here. Maybe I want to make this a little longer because it didn't look centered to me. And I'm going to be a little extra sometimes. All right, next thing. If I wanted to make an exponential function, let's say I put in a circle, and I'm going to make a teeny tiny circle, like maybe like this. So if I click off of it, it automatically gives me a black thin border and a light blue inside. I can change that right over here with the fill color and the border color. So maybe I want to fill them up in red, and maybe I want the border to be thicker, or maybe I want the border to be dark red. Okay, so did I make it dark red? No. Oh, I changed the inside. So maybe I want the border to be dark red, the fill to be bright red, and that's my point, right? Okay, I'm going to try to graph 2 to the x power. Y equals 2 to the x. There's an invisible 1 in front. Here I can type this. I'm going to go right here, text box, y equals, you can't use equation editor in here, which is kind of annoying, but 2, and I'll just do, for now, raised to the x like this. I'm not being fancy, it's just so we all remember what I'm doing. Also keep in mind, that means there's an invisible 1 out front, and only the 2 is being raised to the x power, okay? Next, clicking again on my red dot, and I just copied it, and I'm going to paste a few. All right. As I go to the right, each new point for an exponential function will be times 2, since that's the number as my base, 2 times 2 units away from my asymptote, which is the x-axis. The first dot was 1 unit away. That makes this one 2 units away. The next point will be 3 units away. So I'm going to click on this guy, not 3, I'm sorry. It'll be double whatever this was. So this was 2, what's 2 doubled? 4. So I'll be 4 units away. This point here, I feel like if I don't click and drag it right away, it gets a little weird. If that's 4, 2 is the base, that's what I keep multiplying by, then the next point will be 8 units away. So it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The next one will be double that, so it'll be 16 units away. I already know that that's 8, so I really need to go 8 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more. That looks about good. And then I'll put 1 point on this side. So if I'm doubling as I go to the right, because of that 2, that means I cut in half to go to the left. So that means I'm right about here. Obviously, I can't be spot on, but looks decent to me. Next thing. In this select line option, there is one called curve. Not curved connector, curve. I'm going to click curve, and I'm going to start very, very steep. I'm actually going to be above this a little bit. I'm going to click it down, and I'm going to hit the middle of each of these dots, click it as I go. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm not really looking at the dot as much as the graph paper because my dots are not totally in place. I did my best. That was the 4th one, 5th, 6th. And now maybe I go way out here, super, super close to the axis. Double click, and I have made a curve. So beautiful. It's a little lumpy. Sorry. You could change the line color. Maybe I want it to be red to match the rest of the graph. Line weight, maybe I boost it up to a 2. On the ends, line start and line finish, maybe I want different arrows. So I'm going to go and put these arrows on the end and put the cursor on. And here I've made a graph. I could go and use more text box to kind of put more details on this. Save and close. So the nice thing is when you're dealing with the document, now this is saved and you can move it around and do what you need to do, and I'll explain more about that in a second, but it doesn't come apart. You know, it was really a bunch of separate dots, the axes, the background graph paper. It's all these separate pieces, but right now we're not in edit mode, so I'm not going to screw this up. Here you have another bunch of options. So if I wanted to type something else, if I hit enter, I can't type as much as I'd like. I'm just typing nonsense here. Do you see, like, if I try to move, I'm clicking to drag this, I can't put it next to the text, right? Even though there's not really any text here. If I click on this though and do this one, wrap text, that will wrap the text around it so it doesn't leave space next to it. I just hit the down arrow and it moved it away. Another reason, even though you might think like there's no reason why this text up top can't fit, what's going on? Let me zoom in a little. Well, it's because there's an invisible 1/8 of an inch margin around the image. So if you wanted, you can make it 1/16 of an inch. That allows things to be closer. You can customize it to even smaller, or you could say 0. As you see, when I did 0, everything could be right up against it, and you may want that, you may not want that. Here, it's going to similar. Do you see like the difference? It's in line with the text where you could have this big gap and then you could write right next to it. So if it were, let me click this here, I could type next to it, say right here, whereas wrap text, it would be right next to it. And this one, nothing would be in line with this at all. Okay. So you have those options. You have move with text, fixed position on page, position options. You could play around with that, do a little exploring. Size and rotation, all in image options. So you can do, interesting, width scale. Your width is horizontal. If I wanted to do a horizontal stretch of 2, my width scale, I could make 200, but what it did was it kept my height scale the same because it locked aspect ratio, do you see? So now if I go back, watch what happens. If I click that, it will not lock it. So if I change, and really, let's do 100 and 100, like to start. If I change my width scale to 200, that was a horizontal stretch of 2. It stretched my picture and made it twice as wide. If I made this 50, it's a horizontal compression of 1/2. If I put it back to 100, if I made my height scale, I'm really picking easier numbers for this, but 200, that was a vertical stretch of 2. Do you see my width did not change? Okay. If I made my height scale 50, that was a vertical compression of 1/2. But if you want an image to stay the same, if you make it bigger, and you could lock aspect ratio, and it keeps that proportion the same. So you could really, just drag it by the corner and make it bigger or smaller. All right. Then you have your other features here as well. What else is there? Oh, position. Yeah, that stuff was all elsewhere. So looks good to me. And that should be fairly helpful to you. Say you wanted to make another graph from this one and you just want to kind of, already have your axes made and you want to kind of work with it that way. You can go here, Command C to copy, click next to it. Oh, I could change this back to wrap. So I could put them right next to each other. Now I don't want this to be on top of it, so scooch that over here. And now if I double click on this, I can edit this. Another thing you can do is, for now, I'm only clicked on the background. I'm going to move that out of the way so I could kind of work with the other features in whatever way I'd like. You could have locked your axes together so that they would move together. You could do that as well. You can drag, like if you pull this over all of these details, you can kind of scooch it to the side, maybe slide this back in, and then let me zoom out again. And then you can move these pieces maybe one by one. So I really don't want the curve, that I could delete, but maybe I bring the points back in one at a time. Maybe I bring the axes back in one at a time. You decide what you want to do and kind of take it from there. Oops, I didn't mean to stretch that. So I'm going to take these little dots, I'm going to store them over here. You could totally just make new ones every time also. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to delete that. I can always put a new one in, and again move that. Okay, you don't want to start up too high, but you want to be in this white and gray. If you drag over this whole thing, and make sure you're on it where that little plus sign, looks like a little axis, pops up. I'm going to right click on it if it will, oops, let me. And you can do this, which is called group. So what group does is it keeps it together as a package deal. So even if I click off, click back on, and then I go to move it over. Well, now these two things stay together, sort of like the dotted lines we do when we draw graph figures. It stays grouped together and they move left 5, up 2, whatever has to happen. So we have that, and that's going to be helpful. Another thing, if I right click on the graph, just the graph, and I click on order, I could bring to front, bring forward. There's layers to this. Right now it's all the way in the back, meaning everything else I put on here will come up in front of this. And that's a good thing. I don't want the graph paper to be in front of my axes. So I appreciate that it's already all the way in the back. Now I have my axes, and I want to put that on the paper somewhere. So maybe I like it here, maybe it's a little bit off, whatever you need to do to adjust it. Maybe you want to stretch it out, make it a little bit taller. Maybe you want to zoom in and see how lined up it is. Okay? Do you see it's not quite straight? So if you're a lunatic like me, you'll sit here all day and worry about fixing it, but whatever. So now that that's there, I can drag, oops, see, I'm grabbing the graph. I didn't mean to do that. Now I can grab each point and plot them wherever I need them to be, okay? You could also make dashed lines for asymptotes. So all you do differently is still you pick your line. Maybe you draw some line on here. Here, you can make it dashed. You can make it thicker. You can change its color. I don't know, whatever. Okay, so if you keep clicking, you'll just keep making more. Again, put the cursor on, and you can stick arrows at the end. And then we can put this wherever it might need to go. Okay, so I don't suggest that you guys do this all the time, but if you needed to, for some reason, make something, I just figured I would teach you a few tricks, and I figure I could share this with my colleagues as well, or other teachers. So if they needed some help, then they can have some help too. And I just figure we'll feed two birds with one scone. I hope you liked this. I hope you found it helpful. And talk to you soon.